Good morning. I hope you're having a great summer. I hope you're praying for me as I'm on my sabbatical, as I'm praying for you. Today I want to share out of Matthew 6, a passage of scripture that's very close to my heart. They say that every author only ever writes one book, their magnum opus, and every other book after that is kind of an extension of that first book. Well, I've not written a book, but if I ever were to write a book, the book I would write would have to be about the sufficiency of God for all seasons. And you've heard me talk about this. It comes up in my preaching quite often. I've told you before, when I was a young pastor of 30, I thought I knew a lot more than I did. At 54, I know less things, but the things I do say that I deeply know, I know more deeply. I own them. They're in my bones. And this is one of those things that I think we can count on God to be sufficient in all seasons. And the reason I think this is because over my life I've found that to be true. And I hear it all over Jesus' teaching, specifically in Matthew 6. You'll recall with me lots of passages here where Jesus is trying to teach them to reframe how they understand God. And his disciples obviously thought that their performance, their religious performance, had a lot to do with whether God blessed them or not, or what they could count on with God, or what they could ask for God. And he's trying to just say, I want you to understand the Father's heart for you. And so he challenges them by saying things like this: don't store up treasures for yourself on earth. Store up for yourself treasures in heaven. Why is that? Well, because when you make heavenly investments, right? To try to store up treasures on earth is to say, I can only count on myself. To store up treasures in heaven is to say, I can always count on God. The same section, he talks about not us trying to serve two masters, money and God. Why? Well, money most closely approximate what only God can do for us. It feigns to provide for us beauty and power and security. Can't. God can. And then he has this beautiful section about not worrying, about birds of the field. And he gives us this beautiful picture. Listen, all you have to do is seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And the thing that I've said to you before, and I'll say to you again, that I really believe, out of Romans 8, out of this passage, no irredeemable harm can befall those who stand with God in his kingdom, those who are God's children. And I believe we are God's children, and that means that we can claim, with God as our Father, he ultimately provides for us. He ultimately protects us. He ultimately secures our future. It is with him that we stand. This is the creator of the universe. This is a person without boundaries, without limitations. There is no end to God. So how could we, if we stand for him, with him, and he commits himself to us, ever think that we would have lack? Now the question is how is it true in any one season? And sometimes we have to work that out in very hard seasons. How is God sufficient? But my deepest conviction is that God is always sufficient and always trustworthy. Great is thy faithfulness, like the mercies of God, new every morning. So this summer, lean into me, into the sufficiency of God for all seasons and in all things. God is enough, and he always resources us for what we face in our lives. Grace and peace to you.